Welcome back, those of you who are back. We have our second session. Again, we're trying to create a bunch of content around the business side of sports betting. We'll get to that. This session is all about jumpstarting your career in sports betting. And Jeremy's back with us, and he's going to lead the dance here and make sure that I don't go completely rogue. So, Jeremy, how about you get us into gear?
Well, Dylan, as long as I've known you, no promises in terms of reining you in from going rogue, but it'll be good content either way. I can assure everyone that. Um, really excited for this session. We're going to start getting into the nitty gritty of like some action items, honestly, for everyone who's interested in breaking into the industry. Last session, we pulled back the curtain a bit. We looked at key departments and operators, took like a deep dive in there. We scrolled the job board a little bit just to give folks a sense of what the departments actually do. This session, we're going to talk about three key things. We are going to take a look at each department and what kind of sets people apart as they're applying for roles for each department. So what are like the key requirements, if you could say, for like a star in the various departments from an entry level position standpoint. Second, we're going to take that through to resumes, cover letters, outreach for actually applying to these entry level roles, how you can stand out, how you can kind of take some of these insights and put them into action. And then the third thing, one of like the really important things in my opinion about standing out is just keeping up with industry news and listening to something like this. I can assure you folks are probably already doing that. We have some resources that we can share, and I know Dylan is planning on sending out a bunch more in the newsletter after the stream here. So that's a little bit in terms of what we're talking about today. Super excited to get into it. But first, Dylan, this past weekend was at Dawg Bowl with Underdog. I'm really excited to hear about how that went. But we may have some viewers on the line who don't know what Dawg Bowl is. So maybe you can start a minute or two just explaining what Dawg Bowl is, why it's awesome, and then we can hear a little bit of the recap.
Yeah, for sure. So Dawg Bowl kind of brings me back to my roots of the industry. Fantasy live championships. I think they started in 2014, 2015, maybe even slightly before that, before we were at FanDuel. But it's one of the most fun parts of the industry. It's where you're playing all year, you're playing qualifier tournaments. If you win a qualifier tournament, you get access to the live final. That's what we just did for NFL Best Ball, which is like one of the most uplifting communities in the space, maybe the most uplifting. Everybody's rooting for each other. There's no bad blood. People actually just want to talk hoops, talk strategy. It was a great event. Some guy who won actually got first and second. So he won like 300 grand. It was crazy. There was a cool story, a really young 22-year-old kid who won about 90 grand. He didn't even win a qualifier to get there. He finished in like third place. And for some reason, the first two guys didn't want to show up. And then this kid got there, came all the way to San Diego alone and won 90K. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, these live finals itself, it's just a place to network. We've got like welcome happy hour type situation going on. The actual watch party is always great. This one was right on the beach in San Diego, made me kind of want to move there. We had Gil's Arena, our big podcast. All the guys were out there this time, which is pretty rare to get them in such a small setting. Gilbert Arenas, my favorite player growing up, he was streaming the entire time, like getting a bunch of the players on camera. It was really cool. But yeah, just hanging out with the fantasy community. It's a little different than sports betting. Like something like this doesn't really exist for sports betting. People have tried. Circa has their contest. I know DraftKings has done some, but nobody's been able to replicate these fantasy live experiences except for Underdog. So yeah, it was great.
That's awesome. And it really, these events kind of turn into like a huge like marketing opportunity for the providers. You get people holding up big checks. You get YouTubers now, like I guess calling him a YouTuber would be a little bit disrespectful in terms of his career. Gilbert Arenas, NBA All-Star, now podcaster. So like what give us a sense of like how this all comes together like leading up to the event prep, or like in VIP, or I think it's less of a VIP type of thing because it's just qualifiers, but just give us a sense in terms of how everything comes together.
Yeah, great question. Make sure my mic's on. Less of a VIP play, but it's fascinating from a business perspective. So these live finals generally across the industry don't really make the business money. FanDuel has done away with them. They've pretty much announced that they're no longer doing fantasy live finals for that reason. You're doing qualifiers throughout the year. If the qualifiers don't fill, you may lose a little money on the contests themselves. You're paying for the marketing expense. You're paying for the actual live event, which can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then you don't really end up turning much of a profit. So the value comes exactly from what you said, from branding, making it things aspirational, and then trying to see if you can get some virality out of it, which I think for us was why Gil's Arena crew was there. It's like, let's see what they can bring to an event like this. If it can drift beyond the fantasy sphere and into just casual sports fans, that would be amazing. But yeah, the business side of these events is interesting. It's like, how do you capture more revenue from these events, because you're not going to necessarily get it from the contests themselves, if that makes sense. Whereas if you ran a similar sports betting contest, you're probably making money all year from people losing money in sports. So it's just a different environment. But on the flip side, the contest mechanism itself is a lot tougher for sports betting, and you definitely don't get that community feel. So we like doing it at Underdog. Like, best ball is the community that kind of drove Underdog's brand to what it is today. And so we want to keep, respecting that and give them something to look forward to every season.
I'm just curious, who gets to go to an event like this? Obviously, you're VP of VIP, so I'm sure you can kind of just show up where you like in terms of Underdog events. I remember when we were back in the day, starting at FanDuel, like if there was an event in New York, we were probably showing up just because we were like hustling, trying to be everywhere. But just to give folks a sense of like, you're working at one of these operators, how do you actually like get to go to one of these events? Is it just marketing people? What's the deal?
Yeah. People obviously want to go to events when they find out, especially when you find out what VIP hosts are doing with hospitality and game tickets. That's a whole nother level. But these events that the company's putting on themselves, it's generally, content, because you need some video and production. There will be the occasional partnerships person there. There will be a couple people from VIP. And then for us, it's like there's a lot of these game operations individuals who kind of helped build the best ball product. They know a lot of the best ball players. And so they're there. I think you could probably get away with, 7 to 10 employees at these things, but it's such a good bonding experience, especially for a remote company, that you end up kind of letting a bunch more people come. And I think we probably had about 30, 35 this year, just because, you want to get FaceTime, you want people to experience the product. But yeah, it's generally the customer facing marketing departments. It probably would be a good one for like a product or engineer to just be thrown a bone if they, had a good quarter, and you can invite them to the event. But I haven't really seen that done yet.
All right, I think we can get into our talking points for today then, if we're done with Dawg Bowl. But if folks have other questions about Dawg Bowl, we will be answering questions throughout, so you can just throw them in the chat. We'll get to them as we go. We have maybe 2 or 3 slides here, starting with our Roland Garros edition of the Bet on You graphic. Clay court season is approaching.
Don't you just want to roll around in that clay? It's one of my dreams.
All right, take it easy. So yeah, let's get into the talking points first. Maybe you can spend like just a minute reminding folks like what we're doing here with Bet on You, and kind of how we're thinking about it.
Yeah. So again, community for the sharpest business minds in sports betting. The feeling is that so much of the content is picks, focus, or industry drama. And we want to have a place where it's people that are actually passionate about the intersection of sports and business, preferably sports betting specific. It's also for people who want to work in the industry, or who just want to know what it's like to work in the industry. And so we're creating content around that. We're creating a community around that. And we'll get to more of the community piece later when we talk about that first cohort that we're building out.
Awesome. All right. I think we can get into it. Last session, we talked for a while about the key departments, what they do, how they work together, how they really work to either generate revenue or reduce risk for the business. Maybe we can just, for 2 minutes, talk through a quick refresher of this, and then we'll get into really what makes people stand out when they're applying for roles to these departments.
Yep. So these are the key departments that, touch sports betting. Obviously, we're skipping like HR, recruiting, those type of jobs. Customer support, absolutely on the front line, easiest way to break into the industry. I think people that start in customer support, I kind of see it as it could be like a minor league feeder system for some of these other roles where you're really learning the ins and outs, managing customers on a one-to-one level. Then you get to VIP, where it's strictly the high rollers. So these are the people who are moving the needle for the business. As I've said in sports betting, the top 1% of customers generally does about 50% of the revenue, which is crazy. And so you really need those one-to-one higher touch points in order to manage them. And then there's also the VIP acquisition side of things, which is different than just general acquisition. These players might not join off of a TV commercial, but they may join if Jeremy is a host and he slides in someone's DMs and he offers them game tickets to go see the Pistons, who are hot right now. So customer support, VIP, those are the two most customer facing roles. You learn a ton about the industry, the ton of what makes these people tick. Marketing, more of a standard department across every industry. There is the traditional marketing folks like paid media, brand partnerships, team and league partnerships. And then you have some more of the industry specific stuff. Underdog, we've got a whole content team, as we mentioned, with Gil's Arena, and we're producing podcasts and we're putting out social media and news. And so all of that can fall under the marketing as well. Then you get to risk and trading, which is another industry specific one, most similar to, I guess, the financial markets, where traders are managing the odds. They're making sure that there's no bad lines, palps, which is, an error from the book, and making sure that there's no like aberrations that they notice and can flag. And then you get to product and engineering. They're really the backbone of any app. Since these sports books now are run on an app and a full-blown tech company, this is so important. And so product and engineering is usually, I'd say them and customer support are the two departments that end up getting the largest as the company grows, just because there's so much to manage. And they're the ones that are keeping the lights on, building new product innovations, and really making everything flow.
That was a great lead in. I think we're kind of teed up now for our first discussion part.
It was like a 6 out of 10. I'll do better. I'm working on that one.
Plenty of time to improve over the next half hour or so. We put together this slide, quite a bit of text in this slide. Maybe we can send this out via the newsletter or different version of this, but we're probably going to spend maybe 10, 15 minutes on this slide because we wanted to spend a lot of time really diving into kind of how do we take this forward. We're starting to gain some knowledge about the different departments. Let's take that a step further and try to understand what really makes someone stand out when they're applying for these roles. So we'll go each one by one through the departments. Dylan, I'll kind of tee you up to talk about each one. But you'll see we have some bullets in each one in terms of like what are like the key requirements for someone to really work and excel in that department. And then we kind of color coded this based on like our assessment of how easy it is to really stand out in these roles from someone who maybe doesn't have like the ideal profile. So you'll see going from like customer support all the way to product and engineering, we're going to get into for some of these departments, there's a much steeper learning curve in terms of like prerequisites that you need to really be like a standout profile. So let's start with customer support. Dylan, you sent out a newsletter a couple weeks back about how, in your opinion, this is really the best landing spot for someone who just wants to get their foot in the door and see what they can do from there once they have an opportunity. Why don't you break it down for us, like what in your mind makes like a really great customer support person, and someone who can then take that and then like leverage that into an opportunity either as a customer support manager or in a different department entirely.
Yep, well said. Yeah, I think customer support is the area that would be easiest to get in without any experience. And it's not because it's the easiest role. I think it's just the easiest to train someone, and it's more soft skill based. So if you have communication skills, if especially digitally, like if you're a really good writer, I think that helps. That's actually one of the more underrated elements of probably all three of those first departments, is especially in 2025, is your writing ability and ability to communicate via email or text, or DM, because there's support in the DMs now. But communication skills is huge. If you understand the product, so if you're an avid player of Underdog or of any of these products, like that's going to give you a leg up. I remember when I started, the learning curve was just so simple because I had experienced virtually every problem that the customers writing in had experienced. And so if you're already a player on one of these sites, it's a no-brainer. And I know a lot of support people who get hired just because they were players on the site. I think I was probably one of them. Decent tech skills. I think a lot of that can be learned, like understanding truly the ins and outs of the product. Again, this is one that if you play on the app, you're going to have a leg up. And then like the last one, and I hate the hustle culture element, but support is one where like the leaderboards are basically going to be how many tickets have you solved, how fast are you solving tickets, and then what are your survey scores. The first two is virtually all hustle. Like if you put in the time and you beat everyone else to the punch and you've got your writing skills down and you know how to answer every question, that's just going to allow you to be the first to be number one on every leaderboard. And then at that point, you're indispensable and you have a lot of leverage. So yeah, I think it's really someone with good soft skills, who's personable, who probably thinks they should be or would be either the best salesperson in the world or just has a ton of empathy and can build relationships quickly. That person is likely going to do well in customer support. And then if you do find yourself at the top of those leaderboards, that's when you should have the extra time. If, you know, marketing is your dream job, that's where you can try to provide value through ideas that you come up with, through things that you notice, through common support tickets from customers. Like these are, you're on the front lines and you're seeing things that the rest of the department isn't. And I think sometimes people take that novel information for granted and they just assume everybody knows it. But when you're in support, you do have kind of this unfair advantage where you can bring all these different ideas to the table. So someone that's thinking in that lane is going to have an advantage and be a really good candidate.
Yeah, and I think the one thing about customer support, again, we have it labeled green, and I had a similar experience to you actually, where I really went into the interview at like back in the day at FanDuel. I'm talking at this point, you know, over a decade ago, and I was already on the site. You know, at that time I was playing like, you know, a couple times a week maybe, and just walking into the interview, having that leg up on everyone else who's not, I think that alone can set you apart. And there's other ways as well. That one example is to actually like be a user of the app. But if you have a strong knowledge of the industry, you know, you're going to walk into any conversation in you know the top 10% of candidates already.
Yeah, and this is one where like everybody says they use the app. So like if I meet a new VP of marketing, they'll probably say that they play the app, but you can tell within a minute, like, are you an avid customer or did you just download it because you wanted this job? And customer support, and then you can get away with that in a lot of other roles, including a VP of marketing. Like it doesn't, you know, it would be helpful if they really understand the product, but it's not a requirement. Support is the one where like you can land a job because of how well you truly understand the product, because the trainers, the hiring managers, they're going to know that it's just so much easier to get you on board, to get you up to speed, and they don't have to waste time teaching you the basics.
All right, let's move on to VIP. I think there's some nuances between VIP and customer support, specifically like the need for strong verbal communication as well as those interpersonal skills. talk to us about VIP. This is actually your department, and I would venture as far as to say you're probably the best VIP person in the industry based on how the 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 players talk about you, I would say. So what makes a good VIP host when we're thinking about like someone who's applying for like an entry level role?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. Communication skills, number one. Again, honing in on that written piece. Like if you are a good texter, if you're a good emailer, and you can write like a human and make them feel like a human while also maintaining that professionalism of like, I work at this company and, here's what I'm able to do for you. That's a skill that you can develop. I think a lot of VIP too, comes down to like whether or not you can see people at eye level. There are a lot of high end individuals that don't want to be looked up to, and they also don't want to be looked down to. And it's like, how can I be their friend immediately, even if I'm just a 24-year-old kid out of college and you're a CEO of a company? Like a lot of times these people actually just want a younger person that they think is nice or cool or something that they can escape from their real life and befriend. So I think that's a skill. It's like the ability to be authentic and genuine, two of my favorite compliments, instead of trying to wear this hat, on that you work for an employer, I think is important. I'd also say, like you said, you have availability down here. The quote, the best of ability is availability. This is so huge for VIP. The urgency in which you respond and the timeliness in which you respond is so huge. If you know when the games are, if it's 6:55 and you're not near your phone and a guy texts you and you miss it and it's 7:02, like that alone can ruin a relationship. And not because they hate you, it's just like they needed something in that moment. Their app wasn't working. They needed that bonus that you promised them. They wanted to make sure about one of the odds. So it's like the timeliness and availability and urgency is at a different level when you hit VIP versus customer support, where a lot of times it's less time sensitive. And then being able to talk the talk with that industry knowledge. I think there's a fine balance of talking the talk and being the expert, and also allowing the player to be the expert and asking the right questions and not feeling like you know everything about their job. If they work in finance, it's like you can also learn from these people, and you'd be surprised that they like teaching you. The last one I'd say, which is going to be tougher for someone inexperienced, but it's possible, is if you have an existing network that you can tap into. Now, that's a huge aspect that all the companies are looking for. If they can hire someone that has immediate access to either high-end individuals or a bunch of people who already bet sports or play fantasy, that's going to give you a leg up. So I would speak to that in messaging, in interviews, if that's something that you have. But overall, yeah, it's going to be someone that's super comfortable being themselves, works their ass off, is super timely, and just understands the psyche of a gambler or fantasy sports player.
I have one follow-up question, then we can move on to marketing. So you've actually built out a couple of VIP teams, and the question that comes to mind for me is, it's very easy to like describe, oh, you want to be able to build relationships and have these interpersonal skills and just get to know these people at a human level. How do you demonstrate that in an interview? Like, what are the things that you look for as someone who's like building out a team to identify people that you think would be really good at that?
I think and I've made mistakes on this, but I think it's similar. Like if someone in an interview setting can be authentic, can be genuine, maybe be a little bit unique, come in where I know they did their background work, whether they knew something about me or the company. Like that's an element to relationship building that's huge. If I go into a talk with someone, I'm going to this conference tomorrow and I'm meeting a bunch of people. I've already looked them up. I know where they went to college. Like I have my basketball references handy if I need them, and I can tell when someone does the same. And that means that they're probably going to do that in every interaction, which is really, really positive sign. So I think for the hosting side of things, you are just looking for that compatibility. And it's tough because it's hard to tell in an interview how hard somebody works. So you're kind of doing a lot of personality hires with the hosts. and hoping for the best. The acquisition side of things, that's where you probably will lean on someone's existing relationships, or if they have sales skills, or they've done prospecting before. And then there's other elements to a VIP team besides just those two customer facing roles. You have your sales operations. Can someone build out a CRM for you where you're managing the leads and you're managing the sales funnel? There's someone that needs to be able to do strategy and connect with different businesses and partnerships and sponsorships to try to drive VIP leads. And then there's like the branding element where how do you create this aspirational brand within VIP that people actually want to participate in? So there's other roles that you can get into, but the bulk of it, if there's a 200 person team, you're going to have, 150 that are probably customer facing as hosts or as acquisition reps.
All right, let's move on to marketing. So marketing, in terms of, for me, putting some bullets together for this is kind of hard because marketing can mean a whole lot of different things. It's basically just like how you engage with customers and potential customers from a brand perspective, and how do you get them to your platform, get them to do something, get them to sign up for whatever it is. And that can mean a lot of different things. Nowadays we have a lot of different channels. We're here on YouTube. We have the newsletter. Marketing is just like a very diverse set of skills, and you kind of have to pick one potentially. So we'll just kind of talk us through on the marketing side. What do you see in as far as like the roles that you've had, not in marketing, but working closely with marketing folks in the industry? What kind of makes someone stand out right away to you?
Yeah, I think like you said, it's such a diverse department that it is role specific. If I was to coach a young person right out of college who wanted to break in, I would tell them to select the specific job that they see and then cater their resume and their cold DMs to that exact role. I think there's like two types of really good marketer, or actually maybe three. I'd say the creativity is one, like whether that's copywriting, helping social media, content, like the creativity now and understanding the different algorithms on the different social media platforms, like that's huge. There's your technical marketer that's probably a bit more traditional. They understand like the full life cycle of marketing and which cohorts to hit and when, which potential customers to hit and when and how. And then that's going to be, pretty heavily reliant on the data to inform their decisions. So more data focused. And then the third is kind of this like growth hacking mindset that we're seeing today, which, primarily I'd say that's customer acquisition focused. Like what are these unique ways through digital marketing, stunt marketing that we can drive net new traffic, net new revenue to the business? And that's one where I think is a bit more entrepreneurial. If someone actually started something in college and was able to, build up some sustainable audience or even just a flash in the pan audience, it's like you did that and maybe that can translate to this type of a role. But I think like you said, it's so different. I think if you have a combination of all of them and you're passionate about marketing, like now there's so much information and so many podcasts you can listen to learn a bit about it. And then it's about honing in on the one specific role that you actually want and then driving towards that through, the DMs and your cover letter.
Well said. We have a couple questions. What do you say we take some questions to break up this slide a little bit?
Go for it. I don't have them up, so you got to read them.
All right. Well, I can pull it up on the screen.
Oh, shit.
So Funkmaster had a question. In what opinion, are there any online certifications that would help a candidate stand out?
Yeah, I've seen people have asked me this in the DMs. I don't know of any. Like I personally haven't recommended that anyone get a certification. People have asked me before. I'm not entirely sure because that's not my world. My gut says no, except for maybe engineering. It is some engineer would have to correct me on that if that matters at all for an entry level job. I suspect for the first four buckets, it's probably not going to be that meaningful. I think it's something when I see it, you kind of know that the person did it because they want to land a job and you almost throw it off. It's probably the wrong way to look at it, but I guess I'm not informed enough. I think what's better than a certification is if the person has either content that they've created or ideas that they've posted online. And if not that, then they're feeding that to you in the DMs or in their cover letter. Like, I think that's going to be more impactful than a certification. So if I were to recommend, like, if you were going to put 3 hours into getting the certification, I would say find one role that you want, put 3 hours into coming up with some awesome ideas and then sending them out to people. I think that would be a bit more valuable. That's just my take, though. I might be wrong.
Yeah, I would say I really like your idea about putting in some effort and really putting yourself in the role and thinking through how you can make an impact, and kind of delivering some of those ideas that can also be a talking point during any interview you have. I would say, I think for marketing, there's a handful of certifications for a lot of those like very specific skills that could be useful, especially if you think about like video editing, like working with some of like the specific tools within marketing. But again, you really hit this on the head before when you talk about marketing. It can mean a lot of different things. You should think about what you're interested in, whether it's video editing, growth hacking, copywriting. I think there's a lot of really great courses, materials out there on each of those specific things that make sense. And then on like the product and engineering side, like for sure, I think in general, we'll get to this when we go through that department. There's a very, very high bar for technical expertise. And in general, if you don't have like a technical background, there are certifications that, boot camps that are out there. In general, I think if you're going through one of those boot camps, it generally means like you're probably behind a lot of the candidates that are already in the process who studied computer science, but those boot camps do exist. And I think, we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into that department specifically.
Yeah, your answer actually just helped me get to what I think is actually the right answer that I'm not going to hedge at the end. I think that they will help you if you choose the right courses. They will help you improve your skills enough to where you'll be more impressive in an interview, or you'll have better ideas in that cold DM. But I don't think the certification itself is going to give you any better chance to get the job. That's the way I would say it.
Well said.
It's a bar.
Another question here about really about handling VIP bettors. So I think this is a perfect one to tee up for you.
The potential money launder. Yeah, so you kind of rely on other departments to catch the money laundering or to catch sharp players. So as a VIP host, you're not like totally worried about that. Now, when it comes to negotiating a sign-on bonus, for example, that's when maybe your spidey senses need to be working so that you can make sure you're not over bonusing a potential sharp or a potential money launderer. But yeah, over time, like those players are most likely going to get caught or weeded out of the system. So you're really, I thought where this was going was on the responsible gambling side. And really that's more on the mind of a VIP host. It's like, how do I keep my player happy and engaged without influencing them to lose more? And that's the line that VIP hosts are trying to walk and should walk. I think it's easier at a company like Underdog where we do so many source of fund checks. And that also helps with the money laundering stuff. But yeah, like the sharp play, you're generally just relying on trading for that. And then there's that interaction between VIP and trading where you have a conversation about the player. And generally it goes the way of trading because they have the algorithms.
All right, we have one more question and then we can get back to the bullet points here. This question is, how does the VIP role differ for Underdog versus other companies that are more focused on traditional sports betting?
Yeah, the players are smaller on draft. It's a great question. And I'm learning this as I go because Pick'em is new to me. So I'd say like the average VIP is a smaller player whose bet size is smaller. You're not playing as frequently because there's not matches or games around the clock. There's no online casino. So the frequency is down. I also think they expect less, which makes it easier just because VIP is new to these guys, whereas sports bettors have kind of been trained to demand more and to threaten on leaving. Um, so I think the role is somewhat similar. Like your host is still customer management. Um, and then on the acquisition side, it's still, we're trying to identify people who are already either sports betting or they're already playing fantasy and introduce them to Underdog and let them know that our VIP perks exist. So I think the role in that respect is pretty similar. It's just like the persona of the VIP is different. And so you kind of have to treat them as such. It's a younger, more fantasy style customer rather than the older like person that was using a bookie for the last 15 years.
Cool. We'll take some more questions once we get through the rest of these bullets, and then we can move on to the next topic after we take any other questions. So risk and trading, Dylan and I had a very brief debate about which color risk and trading should be on the slide, which I ultimately deferred to Dylan, and we put it yellow. We can get to that debate in a second, but Dylan, how about you walk through risk and trading? What makes someone stand out in terms of applying for an entry level role?
Yeah, and caveat again, these last two sections I have never worked in, and we will end up having experts probably on these streams, definitely in the newsletter to learn more about this. My perception, and from being friends with trading and working alongside them, it's clearly a math background. A lot of these people either were sharp bettors in the past, or they were stock traders, or they have some sort of financial background. That's the easiest way to do the job. It's just more intuitive to someone with that background. I like that you put Excel and data tools there because a lot of the job now is working with third-party tools, not necessarily doing back of the napkin math yourself. How do people do this for like 10 straight hours? I don't know. My brain's already going. So yeah, that math focus, the non-standard working hours, it's similar to VIP and support where you want to be on around when the games are actually on. And so somebody that's already doing that themselves, that, like I said, someone that's already betting probably makes for a good one. But really, yeah, it's the math side of things. I think at the more junior levels, I've been told that those jobs can be trained. And so that's kind of where I like it at yellow, where I don't think it's the most difficult entry level job. I'd say if you're the VP of trading or an SVP of trading, like our guy Will Twin, you probably need a ton of experience. At that point, you've seen every single situation. You've managed hundreds of millions of dollars in risk. Like that only can come from experience. But the entry level side of things, I believe that you could take, either a really sharp gambler or a really smart math person and teach them the ropes pretty quickly.
All right. So I wanted to just have a quick conversation about how we scored this, because I think it may be interesting for people. Personally, my background is I'm not I do not excel at math. And so I think no matter how hard I try, I'm going to be really far behind the curve for a role like this, even if I'm really putting in a lot of effort to stand out. So that I think is that's kind of why I initially leaned orange for this, but you have an interesting perspective on this as well in terms of why you thought it should be yellow. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, to your you're right. I think if you're not a math person, you're probably excluded. So it excludes half the population, but then to the other half, I think that's the group where it's just it might even be green for those people. Then again, they have to find ways to show it, right? I skipped first grade math, not to brag, but I have nothing about my resume, my life, or anything that would show someone that I'm good at math. So it's you have the math, you have the background for it. You have done something in finance or something with numbers, or you're a gambler yourself.
Yeah. I accepted your explanation before, and I accept it now. So I just thought it'd be interesting for people to hear that back and forth in terms of how we kind of came to that, because it is interesting.
We should argue more doing this. We'll get more viewers.
Fair enough. We have a couple of questions, but let's just get through product and engineering, and then we can get to the questions. So product and engineering, I may have more to say on this one than you actually, but given you spent over a decade in the industry, you can kind of kick it off here in terms of what you see on the product and engineering side in terms of people that really seem to be standing out. Is that the case? Do you know like the superstar product managers at Underdog, or are they more kind of behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think it's more behind the scenes. I would just say like I've never really met anyone on product and engineering that is like fresh out of college or even like only a few years out. It is mostly people that are more senior that are coming from other tech companies, other successful apps, and they're bringing that experience to the sports betting world. So that's why to me it's orange. Like you almost have to have experience, especially as an engineer, to come and work for an Underdog, a Prize Picks, a DraftKings, a FanDuel. Like it would be rare for someone without experience. That said, if you built a bunch of apps when you were in high school and college, like there's your experience. But if you just majored in, what is it, CS, if you just majored in computer science, then it's going to be tougher. So yeah, there's like a technical element to these roles that you don't necessarily need for anything else at these companies. And that can't really be, you can't DM yourself and do my little tricks where you're, building quick relationships. Like that alone isn't going to land you a job like it might on the other departments. But I'm curious your take. You've led product at a company.
Well, I think lead product is generous, but in my experience, I was actually really interested in product back in the day when we started at FanDuel. I spent quite a bit of time talking with those folks, and they're eager to talk to customer support people. So we had plenty of interactions. I never really had an opportunity to like join the team or work with them on any projects over a extended period of time. So I didn't really get an opportunity to like demonstrate product capabilities until my current company, Exec Online, where it's kind of a unique situation because like the company itself is like a learning company and a tech company. So you have product roles that aren't overly technical, and this is this is the case in some companies and not in others. So I think the on the product side, if you have like a really good understanding of the customer and how you can improve the customer experience, and you combine that with really sharp business sense of like finding that happy medium between improving the customer experience and making the business money. Like that's really the sweet spot for a product manager. And so I was able to, I worked in product for 5 years, and that was kind of the nexus of that. And I worked alongside a technical product manager. That's just kind of how the business, how the business does things. But traditionally speaking, on the product side, you need like a really high like technical knowledge, and even higher for engineering. So like, so the point you mentioned before, you're probably behind the curve if you're doing a boot camp, but there are some companies that have like associate product manager roles where it's a little bit easier to get your foot in the door if you do demonstrate that you're interested in product, and you have that, again, understanding of the customer, understanding of the business, and you're kind of working towards the technical knowledge. But it varies very, very largely on the company and just how they how their product team is constructed. So
Yep.
I could talk for much longer about that, but that's just kind of an overall synopsis of kind of my experience with it.
Yeah, that was great. And I think you nailed it with something you said for all roles, which I'm learning is like you can be a star in your role as an associate by just being amazing at your job. But as you rise up the ranks, the stars are both amazing at their job, and they know exactly how their job interacts with the rest of the business to drive whatever the goal is, which in our cases is revenue, new customers and revenue. And so that's where like the best directors end up excel, and you can tell like immediately by the way they're working with other teams and talking about what they're doing.
Well said. And I think I'm excited to get in more into that when we kind of start building the community and engaging more with folks, because I think that's really the part that, we can talk all we want about star profiles, but gaining mastery of like the business and how the business makes money and how you can connect that to any role, that's, I think, really the sweet spot. So more on that in the future. Let's get to some questions. We have a handful of questions flow through. The first one here is around really the difference between brick and mortar versus digital, and whether you can whether working in brick and mortar may hurt your chances of transitioning to digital.
No, it doesn't. It definitely doesn't hurt. If anything, it may help you get that first conversation. I would say that some of the books, from what I've heard, may have had some bad experiences early on, like only hiring people that worked at a brick and mortar casino. And it is just a different game. And I think for someone that has gone into a casino every day for X amount of years, to transition to sitting like this behind your computer for 10 hours a day is just a really big hurdle. Like I don't think I'd be able to transition in reverse. But I probably could get a lot of conversations at any casino. So I think it helps you get the conversation, and then you have to probably put in some of the work to learn about the digital side of things and be able to speak to why that transition is going to work for you. So like some of the best hosts and acquisition people I've met came from brick and mortar, but also some of the worst people for the reasons that I've mentioned. So yeah, I think easier to get a convo. Maybe depending on the person, they're like a little bit gun shy, but I just think it's a different game. But the experience can definitely be useful.
Next question is around what jobs at Underdog would fit well with the customer support experience. I think I'm reading that question right. But basically,
Yeah.
like what job postings, for example, would kind of fit well within this customer support bracket?
The lowest hanging fruit for a bunch of these companies, including us, is going to be the seasonal customer support roles. So those are roles that, they're 3-4 months at a time. That's exactly how Jeremy and I started at FanDuel 10 years ago. That's the way to get the foot in the door. If you impress and do really well, you are very likely to get a full-time role. So those seasonal jobs generally open up in, I don't know, June, July, August, before football season. And then after that is, your standard customer support associate, which is the next level. Someone with a bit of experience maybe could get into a manager type role. From what I've noticed, a lot of the customer support managers early on tend to be like the first few customer support agents early on. And then maybe after a few years of growth, that's when you bring in a leader, a VP type. But yeah, I think for us, it's the seasonal roles, customer support associates, and then potentially if there are like super entry level fraud and responsible gambling roles. But a lot of times those will need a few years of experience.
I think we have 2 more questions, and then we can move on to the next topic. So Alex clarified, his question is, how can he think about improving his application for like an analytics data science role at Underdog and other companies in the industry as well?
What does it say below that? How can I improve my application? Applications are tough because you're getting hundreds, if not thousands, of applications for each role. It's hard to retain and understand what exactly your data science experience can translate to. So that's where I think the cover letter comes in. And if I was you, whether it's a cover letter or DM, if I was you, I'd be extremely literal about how your analytics / data science experience translates into revenue and like what you actually can do with that experience in the given role. Why you're having a harder time hearing back from UD, who knows? Maybe sometimes there are already candidates that they love. Sometimes they're looking for different things on the resume. It really depends. I think what we're trying to do is teach that like the leg up stuff comes from the networking, the cover letter, the way that you're interacting on that first call with HR, the way you're interacting in a networking meeting. Maybe I just don't know enough about resumes, but I'm not sold that 2 lines in a resume is going to change much. I think most people have similar resumes, unless you're coming from FanDuel to DraftKings or something like I did. But most other people have pretty similar resumes that I think it's the other stuff that stands out more. I'm sure there are resume experts that would disagree, but I'm not one.
Last question, and then we can move on. Actually, our next topic is how you can take some of this knowledge and translate it into a resume or a cover letter. But this is specifically about VIP and kind of the ebbs and flows of hiring. So Jacob's talking about how it doesn't seem to be much available right now, but how does the like pool of opportunities change as football season approaches, perhaps?
You'll usually see more VIP postings over the summer. That said, New York and New Jersey have been around for a while. And so there are already hosts and acquisition people grandfathered in, especially at some of the bigger companies who have been there for a while. Maybe they have non-compete, so it's hard to leave. And so that's why the new jobs don't open up a lot of times. So that's what I would say about the New York, New Jersey region. Like there are dozens of people that are already in those states working for the big companies. So I think you'd have a decent shot at some of the smaller companies in VIP roles or waiting to see what opens up this summer. An Underdog or a Prize Picks or any of these fantasy companies, those 2 states aren't that important for us. So like I can tell you for Underdog, I don't really plan on hiring a VIP host for those states just because they're a little bit less important. Whereas FanDuel, DraftKings, they have full teams in those states already. So you could always reach out to some of those newer people on those teams at those companies who I'm sure would be down to have an informational chat, and maybe they'll be able to provide more context. But I think the states that have been around the longest will probably be the slowest to keep posting new roles. It just makes sense.
All right. We'll pause again for questions towards the end, but I'm just kind of keeping an eye on time. This has been a great discussion where we spent a lot of time on this slide. We have a couple other things we want to get to, just to kind of draw this through line between what do we do with this information, how can we use it to improve resumes, cover letters, improve in interviews, et cetera. So I'll bring the slide down, and I'll kind of start with a question for you, Dylan, in terms of like strategy for landing some of these jobs. Like, let's start at a high level, like how you think about that between like taking a resume, taking a cover letter, and then maybe sending some DMs or some messages to people to really get the interview. And once you're in the interview, making sure making sure you take advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah, I just think today so many jobs are getting filled by referrals. I wasn't around 20 years ago, but if I had to guess, the percentage of referral-based hires has increased tenfold. And some of those referrals are just through someone meeting someone in the DMs, that person having a good conversation, and then that person at the company vouching for the person they just spoke to internally, and then they set them up with another conversation and it leads to a job. Obviously, some of the referrals are, you and I worked together for 6 years. I think you're amazing. But there are some of these entry-level roles, especially, that are just getting filled through relationships and talking to 3 people until you get to the right role. So my best piece of advice, I had one of these yesterday, and it was a guy that was probably around our age, low 30s. I guess I'm almost mid 30s, but low 30s. And he had a lot of confidence and it was clear he wasn't desperate. Like, he reached out to me in a really good way, creative DM. I talked to him for 10 minutes. He wasn't asking for anything. He was literally just, huge smile on his face, told a few jokes, told me why he thinks he would crush. And that was it. Like he left it, if anything pops up, keep me in mind, or I'll reach out to you in a few weeks. And now the onus is back on him. And he just played it perfectly to the point where if he does hit me up in 3 weeks and he says there's a role at FanDuel that I love, like, I'd probably shoot a text to someone to at least get on the phone. And then that's going to give him a way better chance to land the job. So all this to be said is like, I do believe that the networking element to land jobs is more important than it ever has been, just because it's so accessible and so many people are doing it. And so if you do it the right way and you can get a few people to be advocates for you, then that's all it takes. So really all it takes is one. I met a kid in, I don't know if Sam's on this call. He was on the one last week. I just met him in San Diego. He came to our event. The only reason I talked to him in the first place is because he sent me like probably the best emails I've gotten all year. Very creative, came with ideas, like good references about, the research he did on myself and Underdog. I met him in person. He was great in person. He had to prove it in person. He didn't need me to chaperone him the whole time. He was going around meeting other people. So yeah, I'm just like so bullish on being really creative and personable in the DMs. Or if you don't want to go the DM route, it's like use anyone in your network that can get you to the next person who can get you to the next person, and just stacking these positive conversations. So I know that was a ramble, and I'll be more concise when we talk about this in a newsletter or in further conversations. But like, I just think it's so important. We get Underdog sends out like the new roles every week, and then under that it says who got a referral, and it's like probably 75% are referrals these days.
Yeah, well, I don't think it was rambling. I think it really framed up the discussion in terms of what you think is most important, which is basically getting to know some people within the company and having good experiences with, even if they're only 10 minutes, and just kind of keeping yourself top of mind. It's work, right? It networking is not easy. It like takes effort. So maybe we can get to that and we can kind of give people some more tactical tips, but let's go through these resumes. Like, is there anything that you can do on a resume that will make you stand out, or should you just kind of like chat GPT a resume and like focus on actually like writing good emails?
So I kind of mentioned it with the last question. I think if what I would recommend on a resume is just, again, be super literal about what you've done. Like, write it in plain English. I think the way that they taught us to do resumes in school 15 years ago, maybe even now, it's like it's all just going to get eaten up by the algorithm. So you may as well be a little bit creative, be a little bit unique, and just state the things that you've done. Make it a little bit humorous. I don't know if you guys have seen my LinkedIn and where, I'm saying what I've done. I'm probably a little bit too casual with it, but like a step back, I think is perfect for a resume, just so that you're not in the same batch as all 50 other people. Because these algorithms are reading a lot of the resumes. I would also just put more focus into the cover letter. So I'd have a resume that's a little bit creative and unique. And then I'd write a cover letter that's not too long, but that's also creative and unique. Like, this is the way to stand out. You obviously want it to be really good, well written, probably not chat GPT based, or maybe that's going to give you ideas, but like clearly it's yourself, and that's going to make you stand out. I'm telling you, some of these roles I've posted to get thousands of applicants, literally 2 cover letters. If anyone had just written a good cover letter, they would get an interview. And by good cover letter, I don't mean what they taught you in school, but like actually being thoughtful and unique and creative and maybe even humorous. Like, that's going to stand out and potentially get you a conversation way more than just the standard shit will. So yeah, I would put time and effort into being unique and creative in my resume and a cover letter.
Yeah, I think, we've been getting a lot of questions about, my experience is X. Is that going to hold me back? Or my experience is Y. Like, is that, how can I talk? Like, I think what I'm hearing from Dylan, and I share the same sentiment, is like whatever experience you have, like you should be thinking about how you can express that and translate it into why you're going to be really good in whatever role you're looking for. Maybe just kind of like, it may be overly straightforward, but I think figuring out how to communicate that in a way that's also entertaining.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the trick.
Yeah, you're teeing me up. Like, my first 2 jobs that I thought were pathetic, I was doing basketball training in Maryland for $20 an hour. I would just drive to outdoor courts. And then the second, I was in a call center at Under Armour. But if you look at my LinkedIn now, I wish I didn't do this 10 years ago, but I wish I had. And I would recommend if someone has a similar background to do it. Like all I have to say on that basketball thing is I spent a whole summer, like I would literally write this on my resume. I spent a whole summer passing out handwritten flyers around my neighborhood, and that generated 40 clients for my basketball business. And then the next one, like I said, thank you for choosing Under Armour. This is Dylan. 8,624 times, was number one in NPS scores. And sent 700 return shipping labels when people's t-shirts ripped. Like that's the line I would legitimately put on a resume today. And that would stand out to someone. That's not going to get chopped up by AI. If someone sees that, they're going to think it's funny, or they're going to think you're pathetic and skip it anyway. But you're going to get skipped by the algo, so you might as well take the shot to stand out. And I promise you, most smart, successful people will like understand what you're trying to do and probably take notice of it.
I think we can. I'll have one more question, and then we can move ahead because I know that we're already over time. But who is the best person to reach out to, or people to reach out to? Let's say folks have a solid resume, their application's already in, they had a good cover letter. Now we both mentioned like actually engaging people at the company, getting to know people at the company, building relationships is really important. Like, who do you think are the best people to actually start reaching out to?
Yeah, I think it's someone in that department. I think it's multiple people in that department, and I think you want to send them different messages. I've had situations where somebody will reach out to the whole VIP team, but they'll send the exact same message, copy paste, copy paste. Obviously, we're going to talk and be like, "Did you get that message from that idiot Jeremy? Like, why would he do that?" So I would pick 3-4 people close to that role, send them each a different message. I applied for this role. Here's what I think I can bring. I'd say the more junior, the more aggressive you can be on asking for 15 minutes of their time. The more senior, I'd probably avoid that because they're busy. So I'd probably I'd try to find the hiring manager. So if it says it on the job posting, I'd reach out to the hiring manager, and I'd try to find 2 or 3 people that probably report to the hiring manager. So maybe more junior. And that's where I'd go with the creativity, bring ideas to the table. Here's what I would do in that role. And that's what that Sam Roberts kid did. He's like, I think I should have the role. Here's 10 ideas. And then the next message was different. Hey, I put together this one pager for a random activation that I think would work. So yeah, hiring manager, associates, you can reach out to the HR person, but that they get so many messages, it's probably not worth it. And then same thing for like a senior leader and up, it may not be worth it. I do read all my messages, but I know most people don't.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to like your point about sending, not just copy pasting the same message to everyone. Goes back to what you mentioned before about like how you identify people who you think would be good at the VIP roles, like on your teams. Is like you want to make these people feel seen. Yep. And like when I say these people in this specific case, it's like whoever you're reaching out to, like, hey, I filled out this application, but you want to make them feel like you did your homework on them, even if it was only 10 minutes. Where do they go to school? Do you know someone who went, like, what do you know about that college? Dylan always makes the point about if they played basketball in high school, look them up. Like, did they have like a 30-point game that they're probably, that they probably tell everyone they meet about? Just mention little things to show that you took the time to actually write a thoughtful message that goes a long way. So with that, I think there's one more topic we planned to cover. A few more industry resources. I think maybe we can just do one, and then we can just get to some questions, and then we can wrap it up for today. So Dylan, you had an industry resource that you wanted to highlight. We should just go with that one since we're just going to do one. I'll pull it up here. You can riff on it.
I've had a few posts about the resources I like. I'll do a newsletter that's even more intensive, breaking everything down. I think my favorite right now is Earnings and More. They have, I don't know, 3 to 4 different newsletters. I think one comes out every day. They cover the entire industry, even globally. So that helps me a lot. Like I'm not familiar with the industry nation or globally. So it helps fill in the gaps. They also don't just stick to operators. So you can even see in this one, they talk about Better Collective, which is one of the bigger content affiliates in the business. They cover the retail game, startups. And so, yeah, this is my favorite newsletter right now. Would just highly recommend it. I don't even know these guys. I think most of the others on the list I've at least had some interaction with. Don't know these guys at all, but they do a great job, or girls.
All right. With that, let's just give folks a little bit of a sense of, we have this charter cohort that we're going to be running starting in May through the end of the year. We talked about it a little bit on the last stream. This is going to be another plug for that for folks who kind of fit the target audience that we're going for this, which is current college, like soon to be graduates, or folks who are very new to career. So Dylan, I'll pull this up. You can give like a 1 or 2 minute overview of kind of what we're trying to do with our charter cohort of the Bet on You community.
Cool. Are you gonna kick yourself off?
Yeah, we're gonna try to get clips of this, so I'm gonna let Dylan take the stage here. All right.
It's so funny. Yeah. So as I mentioned, Bet on You is created to really go deep into the business side of sports betting and fantasy. We're saying it's for the sharpest minds in sports betting. And as part of the community, we're launching this charter cohort. This is specifically for individuals who want to break into the industry. That could be straight out of college. That could mean you have a few years of experience. But what we're going to do is we're going to provide insights, resources, network, community, all with the goal of landing you a job by the end of this. So we're going to kick it off in May. We know a lot of jobs are going to open up over the summer. And so we want to get you in front of the right people, try to land, a percentage of the group, maybe everybody, jobs in the industry, and really accelerate your career. So if you're interested in that, we do have an application. We're going to be reviewing them. I think we're going to limit it to around 50 spots. I think we're already at almost 50 applications, so we may have to increase that. But yeah, we're super excited. It's completely free to join. We do plan on launching paid products eventually, probably in 2026, but we need to prove to ourselves that we actually can make shit happen. And so that's where this cohort comes in. Get in now, get in early, and, ride the Bet on You train with us. Everyone's got to get a Bet on Yourself tattoo if we actually land you a job.
All right.
7.5 out of 10. 7.5.
Yeah, I can't say I'll be first in line for the Bet on You tattoo. We'll have to see, how folks get into that. But we have a couple questions here we can take, and then I think we can wrap up. So there's one here about a current opening at Underdog. I believe Shane posted something on Twitter recently about the draft games associate position, which I think is a really cool entry level opportunity. So Brett here's asking about just how he can best represent himself in the application process for that.
Yeah, I think I reposted this one I saw on Twitter today. This one's a job like this is going to be tough because there are so many people like you that probably saw it on social media, are super passionate about it. So the reason I'm pausing on this is like, I can give you an easy answer, but the truth of a role like this is the people who are best positioned, and you might be one of them. I don't know if you've been doing this, but the people who are best positioned for this role have probably been building up their reputation for a long period of time in the draft world. So I bet you there's going to be, I already know of some, like there's people that already have followings on social media. They've been talking about best ball for a while. They've been giving product feedback for a while. Hope and Numi, who are the two people who work for Underdog, that's actually how they got these jobs. And now they're hiring for this role. But they got these jobs because they were just talking about the community on Twitter. They were super involved. They were involved in the Discords. They were providing so much feedback that we hired them. And so I can imagine that the favorites to land this role are going to be like the next version of them, if I had to guess. For you, let's imagine you haven't done any of that. Then I think it comes down to what we just were talking about. It's like, can you send a message that's so engaging and so valuable to them that they have to read it and they have to give you a shot? And then once you get that shot, can you make that 15-minute interaction so memorable and provide, some level of uniqueness and creativity that they haven't seen in other candidates to make them want to hire you? So yeah, I think that's the best way to describe a position like this. Yeah.
And I would say
this is also a unique role in that sense. Go ahead, Jeremy.
it is. Yeah. I think the one thing, like the advice that Dylan and I give, like earlier in the stream, is like you want to give people like a handful of ideas. It's like if you're in this role, like what are you going to like bring to it? What are some ideas that the company could benefit from? I think everyone that applies to this role is going to have 4 or 5 new game types that they think would be really cool. The way to stand out would be to connect that to like actually how that's going to be like impacting the business in a positive way. Everyone has their favorite game type that doesn't exist, but being able to say these are the XYZ reasons why I think this game type would bring more people to the platform or keep more like drive more user engagement on the platform. I think if it's very low hanging fruit to kind of pick your favorite game type and pitch it, but connecting it through to business impact, I think would help you stand out in that way. And then I don't know really how much ideas there maybe around like sizing of contests, but I think that's a big part of this role is like for Best Ball Mania 6, like what are some ideas about like the sizing and the prize pool structure of that could be creative. That's one tool that Underdog seems to use every year, just kind of make slight tweaks to that to kind of drive conversation and keep people engaged. So those are just some ideas, but no matter what you do, like try to tie it as much as you can to actual business impact, what's going to bring more people to the site, what's going to keep them engaged longer. I think that would be my suggestion in terms of taking those ideas and taking them to the next level. I think this is the last question we got. Jen wants to know, what does the standard interview look like for the CS roles? We've talked a lot about the CS roles. Definitely our recommendation for someone who wants to get their foot in the door. What was your interview experience like?
Mine, I think, I think sat in a room with Jen and Samantha. They asked me a bunch of questions about the product that I aced. I showed them my username, hit the weight room, W8. They said, wow, you were the 100th sign up ever on FanDuel? Like, that's crazy. And I think they kind of like hired me on the spot, but there was a written test, I remember, where they gave you a bunch of situations and you had to write back on how you would answer it. I've recently looked back at that and I was a bit more robotic than I would have thought. I think I learned how to be more human in the way that I'm talking about it now. But yeah, I think it's like a personality test in the conversational portion, and then there should be some sort of written test with situations that you're going to have to answer. So it's going to show off your writing skills and show off your product knowledge and ability to show empathy, in a normal way. So Genesis, if you are interested in the seasonal customer support role, just let me know and we can talk through some situations.
Yeah, my experience, I mean, I think you nailed it. My experience was the same. I was going to say pretty much the same thing. They're going to ask a lot of questions about different scenarios and they want to know you'll be able to handle them, professionally. And then obviously knowledge of the platform. goes without saying. So cool. I mean, I think that gets us through the questions. We went a little over time in terms of what we were planning, but I think it was a good discussion. Hopefully, helpful for folks, and giving a little bit more actionable tips in terms of how you can take some of this knowledge about operators in the industry and translate that into refining, some of your approaches for applications to different roles. And the next session, we're going to get into even more kind of actionable advice, and even taking it beyond entry level to, leveraging that initial role to kind of level up within the company. So with that, Dylan, I think you can take us home.
Yeah, first off, if you're listening to this, really appreciate you guys. Neither Jeremy or I have ever done this, but I can tell that it's a lot easier knowing that there's like some of you actually listening live. Would be a lot tougher speaking to a 0-person audience. But yeah, we're gonna practice at this, continue to get better. We want to create a bunch of really good content via video, and so I think the more we do this, the better we'll get, and the more concise my answers will be. And the more actionable they will be. So appreciate you guys. If any of you apply to the new cohort, just reference that you were one of the listeners. I think we'll remember all your names, but if you were on here, you basically get an automatic into that cohort, assuming you meet the criteria and you're not an existing CEO somewhere. So, yep, have a good rest of the night, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks, y'all. Bye-bye.